And now, it's time for another Dice Tower review with Tom Vasel.
Hey everybody, since Colt Express won the Spiel des Jahres award this year, we were assured that an expansion was going to come out for it. But I like the game. If you watch my review of it, it is a fun Western-style game where you're galloping up and down, punching each other, stealing loot, shooting each other. A lot of fun. Well, here we have horses and Stagecoach. I also like how they put one here, which means there's more expansions. But whatever. I digress. I didn't think the game needed an expansion, but it's always cool to see what more they might add. Is this essential? Is it worth your while? Let's look. Okay, so the first thing you'll notice in the edition here is a Stagecoach. Alright, so we'll take a look at the Stagecoach in a second, but it does start up here next to the engine, basically adjacent with the engine. On it you're going to have a strong box on the top, and you're going to have a gunman there who's protecting that box. You're also going to put some hostages next to the board. There's a pile of hostages, and you're going to shuffle them and put one less than the number of players. Each player is also going to be adding a horse card to their deck, and they're also going to be starting with a horse. Rather than the initial start, players will now get to choose which car they started. The way they do this is we say, okay, we're starting with the caboose. This is a 4-player game. Everyone is going to hold out the hand. If they hold out their horse, they put their horse there and they start in the caboose. If they hold out their character rather than their horse, then we go to the next car. And then players will hold out their hand, and if it's a horse, they stay there. And we keep going until everyone is in one of the cars. So let's say 2 people stopped here, and this guy stopped all the way up here in the front car. So this is where players start. They're never actually riding on the horses. The horses are galloping next to the train. However, during the course of the game, you can now play a horse card. And when you do that, you will jump off out of the car or off the roof of the car onto the horse, and you'll be able to move forward or backwards and then jump back onto the train or jump onto the Stagecoach. That's actually the only way to get onto the Stagecoach. So let's talk about the Stagecoach for a second. When you're on the Stagecoach and you're up here, you can punch the rifleman. When you do that, he jumps over here to the roof. Then later on, you can pick up this strong box, which is worth, $1,000. That's great. However, at that point, at the end of every turn, both this and the rifleman move back. Now, the rifleman is kind of annoying because if he ever runs into one of this person, you take a wound. You can move through him. Sometimes you're forced to move through him, or you move on to him, and then you have to move off of him, and he gives you a wound. So he's going to be constantly doing that. And each turn, this is going to be moving backwards until it gets to the rear of the train. If you go inside the bottom of the Stagecoach, you immediately will get a hostage. Now, a hostage is something that you have for the rest of the game. No one else can steal them from you. There are different hostages, and each hostage has a money value at the end of the game, which is great, but they also, because you're like carrying them with you or whatever, they have a negative thing. So she'll give you 250 for every bag you have, but you no longer have your special ability. She gives you 500 for every jewel you have at the end of the game, but you can only move 1 when you're moving on the rooftops. She gives you 800, but you can't use horses. This guy gives you 200 per card, but he 200 for each card, bullet that you've shot. But from now on, you can never place cars face down in tunnels. I guess he's going around and taking pictures of you all the time. And so there's just various different things. This guy, you have a smaller hand. So there's different hostages that you will get, and they will just kind of be a pain in your neck. And there's one less than the number of players, so not everyone can get a hostage. You'll also notice that in the cars, there's now a new thing here, basically flasks of whiskey. And so when you pick something up, you can pick up one of these. These have 2 special abilities depending on whether it's regular whiskey or old whiskey. Each of these whiskeys you put in front of you, and you can use it twice. So I flip it over the first time I use it, and the second time I get rid of it completely. And so one of them, the one that you're looking at here, is a regular whiskey flask. You basically can draw 3 cards and then play an action card. So it's a good way to get actions. And then there's an old whiskey where you can play 2 action cards in a row. So that's pretty interesting to have these, and sometimes players will pick them up because they give them special abilities as the game goes by. That's pretty much all that this expansion adds, except then it adds a bunch more of these special action cards or different scenarios, which I'm glad for, because the more scenarios, the more interesting this game gets. So as I look here at this one here is, you know, some of them are more normal than others. Some of them move the gunman on the top of the car. Some of them here have a lightning bolt on them. I really like this. All players play their card at the same time, simultaneously, then reveal them, and you still play them in order. Some of these have little markers at the end of them, like this one here has one, or this one here has one. That means you can keep a card at the end of the round. I also like this one here because the gunman starts shooting people at the end of the round. Can't use horses. So there's different things that will happen. Nothing that's majorly different than the original game, but there's just a more variety amongst the scenario cards. And that is pretty much everything that's in this expansion. As you can see, this is the kind of small expansion that I really like. It adds a few things that add a little bit to the game, but aren't overwhelming. The Stagecoach is fun. The hostages are my favorite part of the game. I like them. You can go for a hostage, but then you're kind of hobbled a little bit. You know, some of those special abilities are a lot of fun, and when you lose your special ability, but you have, you know, the thematic, it's like, come on, Grandma. Can't move very fast because Grandma's hobbling along with you. So you have that disadvantage. And then there's the Stagecoach itself, which puts another strongbox in play in the game. Although there's one of these scenario cards is if you end your turn with the person with the strongbox, it's like the last one. You end your turn with the person with the strongbox, they have to share the amount of money with you. So there's always going to be probably one strongbox in play. Someone's always going to run the Stagecoach and do that. But then there's a guy moving on top of the train. So you have the marshal moving on the bottom of the train and the rifleman moving on the top of the train, and they're both shooting people, and a lot of more bullets are flying around, which I think is very thematic. I do wish that he was a little bit more fierce. I mean, you get up in a Stagecoach and you punch him every time. I wish there was like a way he could shoot you first or something. But I like him. The horses are good. Basically, the horses add a lot of movement capabilities to the game. You jump on a horse and you move up and down the train, so people are going to be moving all over the place. And you only have one, so you're not able to do that all the time. And sometimes you play a horse and then you look and there happens to be no horses next to your train car because someone else jumped on the horse first and moved away. So it still retains all that. I like having all the different, more of these scenario type cards just because this keeps the game fresh every time. It's going to feel different. This is not complicated. I was able to teach this with the base game to people who've never played before. This is just like one of the new rules for the game for them. Very simple, very easy. If you move everything around in the insert, I think if you take the insert out, maybe you don't even have to take it out, I'm not sure, but I know everything will fit into the base box. So that's kind of cool. Stagecoach, it looks good, adds more flavor to the game. And that's kind of what we want an expansion to be. Dice Tower Judgment, excellent.
Thanks so much for watching the Dice Tower videos. Find more great videos and reviews as well as our top-rated audio podcast at Dicetower.com. You can also find other great shows at Dicetowernetwork.com. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower. The Dice Tower is sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc., where you can find great games for great prices. Cool stuff in stock. Check them out at CoolStuffInc.com.
Shut the door.